and economic power has been stripped away slowly, piece by piece, by the USA for its own political and economic gain. Puerto Rico forced not only to demand liberty for itself, but also to demand reparation for its crimes committed against her. Puerto Rico is surrounded by industry, but also with almost nothing to her people and to her economy. I believe it necessary to include the stats that are included in Albisu's speech. These are 76% of all Puerto Rico's wealth is in the hand of the United States, and her stability is ensured by the US military. Albisu states the following quotation, which is on page 28. This economic exploitation will have long-lasting impact. Our moral advancement of our race will be jeopardized as we are made to be more North American, quote unquote. And this quote, I think, is the key to the emotion and the passion felt by Albisu when he is speaking of the state of Puerto Rico as a nation. You can feel almost desperation within his voice, and the urgency that is needed to grant Puerto Rico her complete independence. And I will end with a second little tale. Speaking of independence, my great-great-grandfather on my mother's side was labeled a troublemaker, if you will, and was sent by his father to work in a prison into which these policemen, I should say, were not moral. And so he decided that he was going to leave, but they wouldn't let him leave, and he decided that he was going to hit one of them with a shovel in order to escape, which he did. He led a good life, not to compare with my great aunt. He left to become an artist, and if you could find anything on him, I couldn't find anything online, but I do have pictures if anybody would like to see of some of his art that he portrayed as part of the abuse that he suffered on the hands of these immoral prison authorities. His name is Jose Soledad Hulguin, for anybody who's looking for his name. And I know it's loosely connected with independence, but that's all I could really come up with. That is my, part of who I am and where I come from. If anybody would like to see the pictures, I could show them, but that does conclude my presentation.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Would you like me to show the images really quick, or?
If you like to, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, 1 second and I'll get that up.
And I would also like, I don't think we should take for granted, Jimena, that your classmates understand who Pancho Villa is. They may not have the name at all, okay? And so could you explain who was Pancho Villa?
I can, very quickly. I actually don't know much about him myself, so let me, I should have done that. I didn't even think of that. 1 second. Anyway, while I look this up, this is a picture of one of the authorities that was present, and my great-great-grandfather just did a quick sketch of him while he was on his lunch break. This is one of those.
Amazing. Mm-hmm.
And really quick. So Francisco, or Pancho Villa, was a Mexican revolutionary general and one of the most prominent figures of the Mexican Revolution. As a commander of the Division del Norte, the Division of the North, in the Constitutionalist Army, he was a military landowner of the North American state of Chihuahua, and he was a revolutionary and guerrilla leader.
Yes.
Under President Porfirio Diaz in 1990.
Yes, because there are two main leaders of the Mexican Revolution. And what is interesting to me from my side is that we tend to forget that out of the revolution, a good chunk of people from Mexico came over to this side of the American, territories. And so that's one reason, one of the reasons why we have the presence of Mexican Americans in the country, right? Because they went in exile because of what was taking place in Mexico. And I think that, yeah, and we need a date for that also, you know, in terms of the revolution. When was it that it took place? I prefer not to say a date because I don't have it fresh in my mind, okay? But we need a name, a date. That's important because then we have one layer of the Latinx population out of this history, right? And the presence is due to that historical fact. And Pancho Villa was fighting against the what is it? The big farm landlords, and supposedly fighting for field workers, okay? Field workers. So this confrontation that took place must have been very dramatic and harsh, right? The one that you were describing. In this context, it was like a civil war within Mexico besides, right? Like the civil war that took place here in the States between the South and the North. And if you were in the middle, right, actually you would have to pay the consequences no matter what, I guess. So it must have been it was very difficult for many people, but there's a historical explanation that we cannot provide here that's not part, as of now, of the class. But thank you for sharing that.
I have the dates really quick. It was 1909. I just realized that I said 1990. It's a correction. That was he uprised. There was an uprising against President Porfirio Diaz in 1909, and that's also when the revolution started until 1923.
Right. So early 20th century. Right?
And then this image really quick is just I think it's a marketplace, I believe.
Okay.
That he attended, but then that's it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Next person then is Gabriel. So Gabriel, again, what is your topic, would you say, in which text from Boricuas are you going to be using?
My topic is how stereotypes of Latin women make it twice as hard for them to be successful in the US. And I will be using Judith Ortiz Cofer's speech, The Myth of the Latin Woman.
Which starts, which page?
I'm not
remind us of the page. I think I have it here. It's page 102.
Yeah.
Page 102. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. In Judith's speech, she talks about many ways that stereotypes have impacted her life, and she gives more than 2 examples, but I'll only be using 2. These 2 examples are about men who she doesn't know, and they just come up off the street and start singing to her. And so she explains that while bystanders may see it as a compliment, it's more inappropriate and uncomfortable than anything. And when a man comes up to her and starts singing Maria from A West Side Story or his own rendition of Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, it isn't because he's trying to be nice, but that a stereotype of Latin women has been built through the media. And when a Latin woman named Maria is shown on a TV show, she's a housekeeper or a waitress, not the highly educated woman that she could be. And so she goes on to explain how the media engendered image of the Latin woman in the United States has been documented by feminist Hispanic scholars who claim that these portrayals are partially responsible for the denial of opportunities for upward mobility among Latinas in the professions, and that is on page 93 towards the bottom. It's really difficult being a woman, especially feeling underappreciated and disrespected already, and then adding on a wrongful stereotype can make it almost impossible for a Latina woman to reach her full professional potential. And in order for people to be able to accomplish their goals, there has to be a level of respect that is needed and should be expected from colleagues or coworkers or even strangers. Alexandria Cortez is a great example of a Puerto Rican woman who has overcome these stereotypes and surpassed society's expectations. Both her parents are Puerto Rican. Her mother was born on the island, and then her father grew up in the Bronx. And so Alexandria also grew up in the Bronx and then later graduated with a bachelor's degree from Boston University and eventually became the U.S. representative for New York's 14th Congressional District. So although it's not impossible for a Latina woman to achieve these things in the United States, it doesn't excuse the fact that there is an unfair bias that surrounds Latinas and many others that makes it twice as difficult for upward mobility. That's all I have so far.
So that was 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have many comments. One comment that I can make is right now is that I think it's a good idea to incorporate somebody who more or less is close to your own generation. I think that's a good idea for a speech. Okay, because it makes us feel like you are closer to identifying with the person in that regard. And in addition, this was a prominent female Puerto Rican individual, young as a person, as a politician nowadays. And that's my comment, okay?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Next person is Regan.
Hi.
Hi, so again, the same 2 questions for you, Regan.
So I titled my speech, "The Future of Stereotypes in Society."
The future of stereotypes, like that?
Yeah, the
Okay.
future of stereotypes in society.
Okay.
And I'm going to be using the same as Gabby. I'm going to be using The Myth of the Latin Woman, I Just Met a Girl Named Maria by Judith Ortiz Cofer on page 102.
Just a second.
Yeah.
Okay, it's interesting that you are adding the future, to begin the topic. So I'm interested in finding out what you mean. What do you mean by that? Please go ahead.
Okay. So throughout the text, Judith Ortiz Cofer describes many instances in which, or encounters with people where a stereotype that they have about her or society has about her is forced on her. Like Gabby said, the 2 men coming up to her and singing songs that represent her and her culture, society, or like, just based on her accent or what she looks like, they were like, I'm going to sing to her this song because it makes sense, but it was offensive and, it just wasn't a right thing to do. And, the net of all is that stereotypes really more often than not are wrong, and you can't judge someone based on a stereotype. And they just shouldn't be present in society that much. And so in order to dismantle the stereotypes made about certain races or ethnicities that we see in society, we need to start in schools and with young people that are in school right now. And so, we've heard it before that children are like the future. And in order to change the future, we need to change how the kids are learning today, like change it from how people learned back in the day. And so a way that needs to happen is we need to teach young kids nowadays to not have stereotypes about people, and we need to teach them about equality and enforce, saying, okay, I acknowledge that there's a stereotype there, but we need to reject it, and we need to not focus on that, and we can't judge a book by its cover. And so my first quote is on page 108, and it says, "Every time I give a reading, I hope the stories I tell, the dreams and fears I examine in my work, can achieve some universal truth, which will get my audience past the particulars of my skin color, my accent, or my clothes." And so what Judith is trying to do here, she's trying to change people's, outlook on this and have them say, okay, the stereotypes that I have or society have, they're not right. Like, this woman is not that stereotype, but I like the example with the girl who thought she was a waitress. Like, that's just, it's unethical and it's wrong to think someone, to judge them based on a stereotype that society has about them. But the basic point of it is that people shouldn't have these stereotypes at all. They shouldn't be present in society at all because they're wrong most of the time. And so we should work on educating, children that stereotypes surrounding people more often than not are wrong. And you can't look at someone and say, okay, I'm going to judge them based on where they're from or the color of their skin or their accent and some stuff like that. And so another quote that I found is on page 105, and it says, it's when the boy who took me to my first formal dance leaned over to plant a sloppy, overeager kiss painfully in my mouth, and I didn't respond with sufficient passion, he said in a resentful tone, I thought you Latin girls were supposed to mature early, my first instance of being thought of as a fruit or vegetable. I was supposed to ripen, not just grow into womanhood like other girls. And when I first read this, it was really sad and discouraging that even young people that are in school with kids their age have these stereotypes because they recognize older people in society having these stereotypes about people. And kids are like sponges, so they really absorb anything that is thrown their way. So if we, are constantly presenting kids with these stereotypes and not telling them like that's wrong, you can't do that, then they're just going to have those same stereotypes and nothing's going to change. So we really need to enforce in schools, especially when parents maybe are presenting kids with these stereotypes at home. We need to enforce in schools why this isn't okay and why this needs to change. And then my last quote is on page 107, and it says, there are, however, thousands of Latinas without the privilege of an education or the entree into society that I have. For them, life is a struggle against the misconceptions perpetuated by the myth of the Latina as whore, domestic, or criminal. And what I took from this quote was that education about this isn't just crucial for kids to learn that they can't have these stereotypes. It's also crucial for kids who are Latina and Latino to know that they're not that stereotype, that it's not, that they are so much more than that, and they have so much more potential, and they have the same potential, and they should have the same opportunities as every kid, and they shouldn't just be labeled as whore, domestic, or criminal, and that's not what they can be. They can be so much more than that. And it's important for them to learn how to combat that, and the kids who don't have this education maybe don't know how to do that, and they just think that that's all that they can be because of society's stereotypes about them, and that's not okay. So education is important for kids to learn that they're not just that stereotype too. And just to wrap this up, this all sounds really good, and it sounds really easy to just tell kids like, you can't have a stereotype about someone and we need to just completely reject it. But it's a lot harder than that because of how deeply ingrained and rooted that these stereotypes are into society. So it will take time, but everything has a beginning, and a lot of schools right now are incorporating, programs that encourage equality and just having kids realize that stereotypes, you can't judge a book by its cover, like I said, that stereotypes are not an okay thing to have, and you need to move past them and reject them. And if we continue on this path, the hope is that no kids will have to go through what Judith Ortiz Cofer went through, and that it'll be good. And my personal connection with it is that I am majoring in early childhood education. So I'm reading a lot of books about how a lot of kids aren't being presented with the same opportunities or advantages that other kids have. And, when I go into the classroom, I would really like to make sure that this is something that doesn't happen and that stereotypes aren't present in the classroom of the school that I work in. And I think that's really the hope of a lot of teachers. But yeah, so that was my personal connection to it. And that was my presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really like the way you connected what you were saying about children in schools and youth in a school, finally in the end, to what you yourself are interested in, what you have been reading about. And so that makes the speech more meaningful for me as an audience, not only to you, presenting, but to me as an audience. So why is she saying that? Why is she focusing on so much on children, say, or kids in a school? I was wondering myself, and you were giving different layers of reasons, right?
Mhm.
For insisting on that point in particular. So I think that's quite interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Austin. So the two questions for you, right? What is your title, more or less? What is your focus? And what is the text from a request that you're using?
I don't think I did my speech right, so I don't really have anything.
Talk to me after the class then. Yeah, you're seeing what they're presenting, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go to Fernanda. Fernanda? I guess Fernanda, I thought she was here. Let's see, Fernanda. I had her as being here. Fernanda? I thought she was here. That's quite surprising. I think she was here.
She said her class like froze and it kicked her out.
Okay, she's not insisting to come back because that's happened before, and I let more, some of you back
It's
in.
not letting her come back though.
I basically, I said we were meeting to only do the presentations, so that's what we are doing. I don't have much more to say. I will conclude the session then by saying, be prepared. I have listed you, okay, to present each Friday. I have repeated that information. I gave you examples on how to present, how to go about doing the presentation, the speech. Remember, you're persuading us and you're not informing us only. This time around, as your classmates are trying to do, you are trying to convince us about your specific point of view, the validity of your point of view. Okay, Fernanda is coming back. So let me highlight something. So it would be important to see how the presentation fits in with your experiences and your values, and I think that's what Jimena was trying to do at the beginning, right? To give us examples from relatives and trying to argue the case that this pertains to, as she put it, independence. But also, as who was the last presenter? Our last presenter was Regan. She was also dealing in ideas, right? I think this is important about stereotypes. I think this is crucial. We need to teach kids in school how to appreciate different people, how to become, know that they are equal to each other, and so on and so forth. And then she said, I'm studying, right? This is my major, I guess. I'm reading about it. So she made it personal as well, okay? So think about it before you are going to do your presentation. Fernanda, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so the two questions for you, right? What is more or less your title or your focus? And what will be your text from Boricuas?
I did pages 93 to 94. Black and Latino.
And who's the writer?
Roberto Santiago.
Exactly. Who is the writer of this anthology? He's the person who put the anthology together. So it's a main, what is it? Participant of our conversation here. Okay, and what is your focus?
Puerto Ricans not being Black.
Okay, can you say that again?
Puerto Ricans not being Black.
Okay, it's not.
Yeah.
Oh, no, okay, it's not being Black. Could you give me the page again?
93 to 95.
93 to 95.
Okay, so being Puerto Rican doesn't mean you're not Black. There's a lot of Afro-Puerto Ricans that are mostly from African descent. Puerto Ricans are proud to be from Puerto Rico, so some of them don't accept the fact that they are Black, even if they have some African descent. The author says, acting Black, looking Black, being a real Black. This debate among us is almost a parody. The fact is that I am Black, so why do I need to prove it? His friends will always tell him that he's not Black, that he's a Boricua. And his grandparents are also Black. He describes them as Black as carbon. But in Puerto Rico, they're not officially considered Black. And in the island has a long history of encouraging their Puerto Ricans to be considered as white and not Black. When half of the population in the island has some African roots in them, but they still decide not to identify as Black, even if they have African roots in them. Some Puerto Ricans do consider themselves Black, but they identify as a Puerto Rican, which I don't think like it's bad because they do consider themselves Black, but they also don't give up the fact that they're Puerto Rican. And I feel like that shows that you don't have to choose a side, that you could be both Black and Puerto Rican. So there's some Puerto Ricans that don't know how to fit in their own country because they can't consider themselves Black, even though they are Black. And half of the country consider themselves white or Puerto Rican. A Puerto Rican said, I'm not sure who said this, but I did research and a Puerto Rican said that some Puerto Ricans don't want to use the word Black because they see it as an insult. And I don't think Puerto Rican children should feel like they have to choose a side and they can't say that they're Black to their friends because their friends is gonna tell them that they're not Black, they're just Puerto Ricans. That's all I have.
That is 3 minutes instead of 5.
Okay.
I need to ask you a question, okay? Because there is one, Fernanda, don't turn the camera. You are not.
I'm sorry.
I'm not off the hook, but there is one element here from my evaluation, right? And that element is credibility. And so I'm going to ask you the question, how does this in any way relate to you?
Well, I feel like it doesn't, but I've seen like kids around from my school that would just choose like not just Puerto Ricans, like let's say like Mexicans, like some of them won't say that they're Mexican. They would just say, "Oh, I'm from New York." But I'm also Mexican, and I don't say that. I say that I'm Mexican, even though I was born in America and I was raised in America. I don't forget that I am Mexican and my family comes from Mexico. So I don't pick sides. I just say I'm Mexican and American.
I would have loved for you to have put that as part of your speech.
Yeah, I was just having trouble. I didn't really know how to do it.
Because you were, you had that perception, you had that conversation inside your mind, you had that experience in high school and where you are coming from. And that's what I'm asking for, precisely. Okay, and that's an inspiration. That's what that's my point, little point here. Okay, so this is my inspiration. I've seen this happen somehow. It looks tangential, right? It looks like it's not clearly connected to what I'm going to say, but it does have to say. It does have to do. Okay, with this
Yeah.
ambiguity about being Puerto Rican or Black, and so on and so forth. Because one of the main points, in my view, that you made through your 3 minutes was, I think, I don't see the need to choose. I think that's what you
Yeah.
stated. Okay, and that's a powerful statement, okay, in my view. And then you explain why, and then you were explaining why. So that's what I mean by credibility, Fernanda, that we add to the speech any way in which we ourselves, right, are representatives of the situation, okay? In any way, okay? In any way. So that we trust that you're saying this because your values are embedded in your speech, and also because your experiences and your thinking, right, personally, has to do with the ideas that you are trying to support, that would be my point. I'm trying to help out, okay, to clarify. Okay, thanks a lot. So I will stop unless you have a question. So for sure, I will be posting what I said in the raise your hand forum, okay? Saying that I'm going to be making available these 2 videos for you, that we will be meeting on Wednesday, that you have deadlines in terms of the readings, the assignments. You are to read them and you finish them before you watch the videos, compare notes, right? Also, and finally, that on Wednesday, I'm going to start the session at the same time in case somebody has a question. I will wait for 15 minutes and then I will close the session if nobody is coming to see me, okay? So that's for next week and have a good day. Thanks a lot, Austin. Please stay. Or if you have a question, please stay.
Thank you. Have a nice
Have a,
weekend.
have a great weekend.